Hey, what's up guys? capnbozzy here, and you're watching Mass Effect 3 Multiplayer N7 Academy Part 8. And in this episode, I'm going to be going into covering the first character in this series, and that is, of course, the Turian Ghost Infiltrator, aka the TGI, as you can see on the screen here. So, figured, TGI would be a good place to start since he is, in my opinion, the best all-around kit in the game. Just as far as his, his speed, his survivability, his damage output, his power, synergy, all those things, just makes him, in my opinion, a really great kit to use, and definitely a kit that is worthwhile getting good with. So, let's go through my build here so that if you want to use this yourself, or you simply want some inspiration of a build for you to customize, then this is a good place to start. So as for powers, obviously I got for Tactical Cloak the first three here filled up, and then I'll just say I'll call these A and B for the last three slots in all of these. So of course for there's damage bonus. For rank 4, that's definitely something you want over power duration. The damage bonus is something that, of course, you want to cloak, and then, then you want to shoot your gun, and that will give you the damage bonus. And then I have recharge speed here for tactical cloak over melee damage. Frankly, I'm not going to do really any meleeing while I'm cloaked. If I do any meleeing, it's not going to be while I'm cloaked anyway, so it's pretty useless to do that. Much better to just have the recharge speed. And of course, lastly, Turians are known for being really great with assault rifles, so you definitely want to take advantage of that over just firing another power. That's not really important, because actually you can, while you're cloaked, you can still use overload, and that will still work. So you definitely want to go with the assault rifle damage here. It does, when you're activated, once again, it will do 20% more damage, so that's definitely worth it. Okay, and then for stim packs, of course, with this power, this just uses your grenade slot, and whenever you use a stim pack, it will automatically restore your health and shields. So that's definitely something that you want to use, and it's really an excellent power. You don't really need to. Well, actually, it's not exactly like an Auspex. As far as I know, I think it just restores your shields all the way. It doesn't restore your health as well. So let me just make sure I clarify that. So you also do get a damage bonus right after you use the stim pack. But really, what you want to be using these packs for is just using them like another type of ops pack. That's what I use them for, and I even use grenade capacity for in my equipment slot. To give me tons of these things, because when you're playing platinum, it just makes the TGI an absolute beast. Like he's just able to survive, because you can just you can get these up to I believe 6 with just these first slots with the extra grenade capacity, and you can just be using them all throughout the game as soon as your shield goes down, so you can just keep on basically tanking with him. And so this just gives him amazing survivability, and he's already super fast. Plus, he's already got a great dodge. So definitely something you want to use. And of course, if you want to do this build a little bit differently, it's not too bad of an idea. To get your shield bonus up or any of these other things, it's you can invest more points, but ultimately you're really just fine with these first three for stim pack. So then you got overload here, and then of course really the bread and butter combo that you're going to be using with this, by yourself, obviously you're going to be doing different types of explosions if you're doing it off of teammates, but by yourself you're just really going to be using incendiary ammo, and hopefully you have incendiary 3s or 4s. Obviously 4s are the best, and you're going to be using those to prime enemies for fire explosions. And then of course you're going to detonate them with overload. And so of course got those first three, and then with number 4, some people I see use the chain overload, and that lets you hit one additional target. 60% less damage. Personally, that's great if you're doing combos with along with a teammate. But really, if you're most of the time, I personally prefer just to do the damage and not have like this damage reduction, simply because most of the time I'm going to be detonating my own fire explosions, and as well as using it just to strip shields in general, even if I'm not detonating. So in my opinion, it's worth it to not have the chain overload and just focus on one enemy at a time. And also because it's not really that necessary, because when you detonate a fire explosion, it has a blast radius, and that can also affect other enemies that are around the the primary enemy that you detonate. So it's not really that necessary. Of course, a lot of these things can be argued, but this is just what I use, so take it for what you will. Okay, so next thing with rank 5 here, I personally use Neural Shock, and that just allows you, of course, to incapacitate weaker organic enemies for a short duration. So basically that, like, if you have a husk running towards you or a cannibal, and you use overload on them, it'll just knock them down. And that's a great way to keep enemies like husks and things that will charge at you just off your back and away from you. And also, that's really more useful, I think, than the recharge speed, because overload is one of these powers that has a really fast recharge speed, and it's really never a problem. You're never going to run into cooldown issues with overload, so you don't really need recharge speed for that. Okay, so then lastly here is, of course, shield damage, and so it's that versus once again the chain overload. You've already heard my argument against chain overload, so in my opinion, with shield damage, it's way more important to be able to use your overload to take down barriers and shields on enemies, especially if you're coming up against a boss, something like a Banshee. You definitely want to be able to take down her shields, or her barriers, sorry, in as fast as possible, and overload is a great way to do that. So it's definitely what I recommend you use. And then, of course, for Armiger Legion here, that's really just for your weapon damage and stuff like that. For the first slot, or for rank 4 here, I suggest going with damage and stability over damage and capacity, mainly because you can use this build with either a Harrier. Usually people use this with either a Harrier or the particle rifle. I personally prefer the particle rifle simply because the Harrier has limited ammo, and although I do still use the particle rifle, I do use the thermal clip upgrade to give it some so you can have a lot more ammo in your clip. However, I still suggest damage and stability here, really because you don't really need, with the way that I have this spec'd, you don't really need the capacity, and also your power damage. It's just definitely not as important for this type of kit, over something like damage and stability. Okay, and so this is another thing. He's just not really having his powers, since he only has overload. That's really the only power this is really going to affect. You don't really need to use power damage stuff for him. You don't really need to buff that. But headshots are definitely really important if you're using the Harrier or the particle rifle, because you absolutely, and I'll show you once we get into the game and I play with him a little bit, you absolutely want to be getting headshots with him, just using the particle rifle to focus on the enemy's heads. That's how you can just burn down enemies just like like they're butter, just when you get headshots with the particle rifle with the incendiary ammo. So absolutely essential is this headshots buff here. And lastly, again, weight's not really an issue. Weight's not really an issue with this build. So damage and stability again is what you want to use. Okay, and then lastly here you got fitness, and okay, so just moving to the fourth one, I just use him for the health and shields bonus. And with his melee is really good already. And you're just going to be using it sparingly, most likely just to take out things like, mooks like husks and things. So, it's not really worth it. It's much more important to have his shields, ready to go. And this just helps him to be, even more, tanky and have that extra survivability. You don't really need to go all the way up. You could if you wanted to, though. Okay, so that gives you the powers I use with him. And as I mentioned, with the weapons, I personally use the particle rifle with him. And of course, depending on what rank your particle rifle is at, you may want to use something like a Harrier instead. Or of course, if you don't have rare weapons like those already unlocked, you may want to go with a different type of assault rifle. But no matter what, I definitely suggest going with some type of assault rifle. And like I said, I use the magazine upgrade, and I also use the extended barrel, which just gives you some some more damage. And I also suggest using some kind of sidearm. Like I said, I like using the Acolyte. Talked about this a lot of times. I like to use it for stripping shields, and also with the particle rifle. If your particle rifle overheats by mistake, then you can use your Acolyte to keep fighting, and then pick a good time in the downtime between enemies coming at you to reload your particle rifle, because that does take a little bit of time. It's enough time that you may want to switch to the Acolyte instead of taking a break in the middle of a fight. So with the Acolyte, I just use the ultralight materials just to keep the weapon weight down overall, to keep my cooldowns a little bit lower, and also just the damage here. So of course, you can use whatever your preference is. Using these different mods are not pretty interchangeable. You can't really get it wrong. So whatever your preference is with those. Okay, so then lastly here with equipment, of course, depending on what equipment you have available to you, where you're at, and how much money you have credit-wise. Obviously, you want to go with the best stuff you can possibly use. So, of course, that would be incendiary 4s, and as well as assault rifle amp 3. You could, if you don't have assault rifle amps, you could also use a pistol amp if you're using your pistol sidearm like I am. And I also suggest using the adrenaline mod if you don't have any adrenaline mods. And of course, adrenaline mods just to help you run faster. Then you could also go with something like a cyclonic modulator if you want to be even more tanky, but I don't really think that's necessary. Could also go with power efficiency if you're using different weapons and things, and you need a little bit more faster cooldown speed. I guess you could also use stabilization module if you need to as well. If you're using like a Harrier, that may not be a bad idea. And lastly here, I use grenade capacity, and that's just to keep my stim packs up really high. I think the max you can get with my build is 6 stim packs, so that's absolutely plenty to keep him plenty tanky and in the fight. So if you don't want to use grenade capacity, or you don't have that unlocked, you could also of course use something like an assault rifle amp. Another thing that isn't a bad idea would be maybe a barrage upgrade, and let me see here if there's anything else. Another idea wouldn't be bad is combatives upgrade, since you're using assault rifle and pistol. That's not a bad idea. And you could also use something like omni capacitors for your tech damage and recharge speed. Lastly, you also got warfighter package that would also apply if you want some extra grenades and assault rifle damage. So whatever works for you, you can experiment with those. But this is what I like. I've been using this build on platinum for quite a long time, and it really works well for me. So that's what's good. So okay, that covers the build. So let's hop into a game, and I'll show you just for a little while just how I play with him. And I guess I'll just put it on. If I'm going to be using this equipment, I'll put it on gold for a little while. Not going to play the whole game, of course. All right, let's get going here. Okay, so of course, depending on what your keybinds are, I personally use middle mouse for my attack cloak, and then I use X for my stim packs, and then F for overload. Oh, actually, I was wrong. I have 7. I have 7 stim packs, not 6. Okay, so like I said, you just want to be getting headshots with the particle rifle as much as you can. That's really what you want to be focusing on, especially on bosses. And of course, you can see with one of these husks here when he's coming at me, once that grenade goes off. Since I have overload spect, I can just knock him down. That can be useful. And once again, you always want to, as much as you can, you want to cloak and then shoot, and that will give you that extra little damage bonus. So I also want to, of course, demonstrate one of these enemies soon. Just doing a fire explosion and priming that with the particle rifle and then detonating it with overload. So I'll just need somebody with a little bit greater shields here. There you go. As soon as my shields went down, I just used the stim pack. And really, you can be pretty loose with them because there's so many, and obviously, depending on what difficulty you're playing, even on platinum, you really usually have plenty of grenades, so it's not a problem. And of course, you just want to burn through your stim packs before you use your ops packs. Really, only use your ops packs if you absolutely need to. And that really just means if you don't have any stim packs left, and of course you can also get extra stim packs by burning through your thermal clip slot. That will also restore your grenades as well. There's, of course, his amazing melee right there. It's got some really good range on it. Okay, there we go. That was a good fire explosion right there.
All clear. Stay alert. Enemy is regrouping.
Just want to get some bosses just to show you, against like a Banshee. Stripping her shields down and getting a headshot, and also doing a fire explosion on her. That's really about all I need to do.
Wounded. Shields down. Stop it.
And of course, also with the melee, it's really great because you can knock enemies down too, and that's really useful. All right, so you can see there. I mean, man, see how fast I burned through that brute. That was crazy.
I'm hit. More shield.
course, without upgraded weapons, you know, you won't have no, I didn't see that I was talking. You won't have quite this ability to, you know, burn through enemies as fast, but you can see the potential, and even if you have you know, you're using something else, still I would say this is the basic formula, you know, that you can use, and will work with just about with other stuff too. Where is that last one?
One more and it's a wrap. Got one more. Enemies down. Good shooting.
So let's see if I get a Banshee here. That's really the only thing I wanted to do, and then wrap this up.
Canister of experimental compounds was lost in this area. Find it and bring it in.
Okay, good. Alright, there she is. Okay. You can see I'm cloaking, then I'm headshotting her. Stripping her shields there with the overload. Like I said, there you go. You just want to be... You can dodge, of course. There's the fire explosion. Then once again the headshot. So that's the basic formula that you want to be using with her, with bosses.
Your mission is to find that object.
Just stripping their shields. I'll finish the round. Why not? There you go. So she's stripping the shields. You can do your dodges. Headshot. And fire explosion. There you go. So remember those headshots. They'll go down real fast with those headshots. So using the Acolyte to strip her shields, and then overload. Then I'm going to cloak. Make sure I get headshots. And then fire explosion. And that right there, that right there is why I love the particle rifle. You just burn through enemies like crazy. Okay, well, I think that's really about everything I have to show you. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'm going to wrap it up here. In the next one, I think we're going to go into the, how about the Krogan Shaman Adept? Sounds pretty fun. All right, see you next time. Captain Bozzy out.